So welcome to the Veteran Community Advisors discussion. And today we're going to talk a little bit about the process for the community advisors and then go over some of the guides for being a VCA and take your questions. And we're going to work together as a community to answer them as best we can. And then finally, we'll wrap up with some ideas around how we can kind of organize ourselves as a community to improve some of the processes. And we're going to start with sort of just an open forum to comment and ask questions about how the process has gone this week in doing the assessments. And Jay is going to kick us off with some thoughts. Go ahead, Jay.
Awesome, Kenric. And thanks again for hosting this. I see a lot of familiar faces. So howdy, Catalyst family. Always good to see you guys. I think for me, I've done 7 reviews so far.
Great.
So each one's taken me about an hour to 2 hours, I would say. Just to like,
I do think that's about the same for me too. It's not an easy process to do them well.
Yeah. So one of the things that I've been noticing in my reviews is, I've given out some, there's been probably 2 to 3 that have gotten really like 5s across the board. Mm-hmm. I've done a few that, had some even 2s and 3s. And I wanted to bring up those points, not those specific proposals, but usually where I see the lower scores when I'm doing my reviews and some of the reviews that I've done with lower scores, I'm seeing that they get the pitch or like the impact, portion across really well. Mm-hmm. But when it comes to like the auditability, I just wanted to kind of cross-reference myself with other reviewers and just make sure, like, if you guys, just see if anybody else is having this experience. Mm-hmm. I'm noticing that there's, at least in the ones that I've done with lower scores, the impact section is good. But then when I get to the, feasibility and the auditability more specifically, sometimes I'm seeing a pattern of lack of transparency of like where the funds will actually be like, going into the, into making the proposal happen. So I just wanted to, throw that out to see if anybody else is experiencing that or if that's just me. This is my first time as a CA too. So I'm kind of just a little bit, just making sure that I'm kind of with it.
Yeah, I'll comment first and then I'll open it up. I agree with you that evaluating kind of the clarity and audibility of it is a little bit more challenging, and maybe in another area where we need to kind of improve the guidance on what people need to be writing about that and how we review it. I know, for instance, in this round, there was an addition of the word clarity as well as audibility, but even that, I think it's still kind of a work in progress to define that category. The key, I think the 2 things are, has the team define some metrics that are clear so that you can measure what the outcome is going to be. And then as you described, like, is it clear who's on the team and how the resources for the budget are going to be allocated in order to accomplish the goals. So that's, that's what the audibility section is striving towards. But, actually writing that is hard, and then reviewing it is challenging. So I'm interested to hear what other people's thoughts are on that part of the reviews. Anyone else want to chime in on that topic?
Everyone, I can say a few words. So yeah, it's been my observation as well that proposals usually are more lacking in the auditability part, and it's somewhat understandable because that's kind of the hardest thing to do, I think, to imagine in the future, okay, what will be our targets, what will be our target number of followers, stuff like that. And we also need to think about the fact that proposers are kind of more excited about doing the work than actually then checking, on the progress of the work. So they have the great idea and they want to get it in there, and that's where they excel. And then the auditability is a bit more hard to get to. So yeah, I agree. It happens like that, and it's our responsibility to give them good feedback, give them suggestions of KPIs, and yeah, I agree.
Mhm. Yeah, another thing to keep in mind, the way there's kind of two things that go into doing the auditability once you get funded. One is the return on intent, right? Now that derives from the idea of an return on investment, but where we're trying to fund projects that kind of have a broader mission than say not some of the efforts are going to be profitable enterprises, but others are kind of more nonprofit type initiatives. So but you can kind of think of it in the same intent, like how are you going to define your intent, and then how are you going to measure that intent? Those are good things to look at. And then I had to learn this myself on my proposal, that when you provide your kind of updates, every bi-weekly and monthly updates on the KPIs, the key performance indicators, really, they are looking for numbers, right? So you need to define what a key performance indicator is, and then that has to have a clear quantitative number that you're measuring on a regular basis. So that's another way you can kind of guide yourself as to whether teams have done a good job in defining how they're going to audit their performance. Anyone else want to, how, AWG, go ahead. I don't know. Someone has an acronym AWG that had their thumb up, and you're welcome to go ahead. You just need to unmute yourself. Okay. Well, we can open it up. Are there other thoughts on how the week has been going?
Hi, it's Naveed here.
Go ahead.
So I've been a CA a couple of times. What we have seen over the last couple of funds is the huge step change improvement in proposals from even the last fund to this fund. So, and I think some of that's due to just the organic nature of people learning and understanding. I mean, one of the key problems we had with the last couple of funds is CAs, proposers really didn't know what good looked like. So everyone saying, what does a good CA assessment look like? What does a good proposal look like? And there wasn't any examples. There was kind of a CA assessment guide, and now we've got things in the CA tool. We've got 4,000 assessments from last time, you know, a few hundred of which are marked as excellent. So people actually start to understand what they need. Completely agree around some of the technical detail, planning budgets, resources, how they align. You know, there's still a lot of improvement to be done in a lot of proposals, but structure of proposals is a lot better. I found it so much easier to assess proposals this time round than in any of the previous funds, right? Even if they weren't full of the right content, structurally they were sound, so you could easily pick out the good and bad bits, and when they were good, they were very good. When they were bad, it was fine, but it was simpler to give feedback. So I think we are just encouraging for everyone. It is moving forward, and I think the auditability piece and the planning piece will come when as people start to see what good looks like. We really don't see on town halls. We saw with Gimbal Labs today that they've given us a 10-minute presentation of what they've done, and there may be these bi-weekly or monthly audits that go on. We don't really see them. I don't know how visible they are, or you have to go looking for them. So that's probably something that just needs to get out in the open a bit more, so people understand. Like, it's really difficult to say I'm going to get 1,000 new CAs into Catalyst in the next 6 months. Yeah. Okay, I believe you.
I was encouraged to hear Dora's suggestion that one of the goals for next year is to have kind of a I don't know, like a workspace on the web where you can see how projects are progressing. Because that will be nice to have some more visibility as to what the different awarded teams are accomplishing and how they're measuring those accomplishments. And that will maybe help feed back into this issue of, what are we really looking for? How are we really going to measure it? Yeah, good. Any other thoughts on how the week is going with the reviews? Alan, go ahead.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm a new CA this round.
Great.
I'm trying to navigate my way through it, and like the speaker just said, I mean, there's not a lot of information for me to gather, at least not that I've found in the short amount of time that I've had to search for it, as far as like suggested approach to it. So one thing I noticed was the auditability, of course, is the tricky section, not just as a proposer, but also as an assessor or evaluation, whatever you want to call it, the assessments. But I noticed there's seems to be, at least from what I'm reading, a little bit of confusion in the community as far as like what challenges to place their proposals in and so on, because I noticed quite a few that seemed to me like they weren't really in the challenge that they should have probably tried to be in.
Yeah, that does happen.
And a lot of that comes down to, a lot of all of these issues really comes down to just kind of educating the community as far as the process goes. It's something that Quasar and myself have been working on lately with my actual proposal, which is Cardano Caravan. Really, it's kind of a metaphorical journey at this point to try to lead more people into Project Catalyst, but I don't want to lead an army of people into the community here that are uneducated. So we're trying to teach them in really basic terms, kind of what to look for in the proposals as far as the assessments go and so on. We've managed to onboard a handful of probably like 10 to 15 CAs just in the last week. We've just started this journey. We plan on doing it over the next couple funding rounds.
And Alan, with the onboarding, what vehicle or forum are you using to help people with the onboarding?
Twitter Spaces.
Okay.
I do a lot of, I'm flawed one on Twitter. I don't know if anyone's familiar with me there or not, but I do a lot of Twitter Spaces. I've got quite a bit of the public ear right now in the Twitter community. And I'm trying to use that. I hate the word influence. I really do, but it applies right now. I'm trying to use whatever influence I've picked up in the Twitter community to kind of onboard people and get them more involved in Catalyst, because I really do believe, as it's been stated multiple times by way smarter people than me, that this is the future of decentralization. This is how we get there. And unless people are involved, I mean, we can't decentralize if there's 65 people involved in it. We need, 65,000 people involved in it, 100,000 people. So I'm just trying to use whatever influence I've got to pique their interest, give them basics as far as how to get involved and in what ways they can get involved. And on that, I kind of work with Quasar and Lido mostly, because they're
that's great.
My contacts.
The
I popped into this. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say the Twitter Spaces have become very popular, so I think that's a great venue to make use of. And I've joined a few of them, and I plan to do some more of that myself. And another thing I am planning to, I'd be interested in some feedback on this, and then maybe we'll transition to go over the guidelines. That I love this process where the community is proposing the challenges themselves. And so we're having this iteration of new ideas of what we should be working on. However, I'm also a little concerned about the continuity of that. Like if every quarter the categories are changing, it gets tough for proposal teams to really prepare for that and to have good ideas. So it seems to me some consistency across the challenges is also important. And I was planning to talk with the circle about maybe a process where we give some priority to challenges that are already in place that need some time, and say maybe a few quarters to really work out a set of proposals that achieved the goals that they were intending. And anyone else have some, what do you all think of that? Is that, do you
So-
agree, disagree, or?
Just more question to that. Are you saying that the challenge team isn't able to facilitate that? Like to have
Well-
challenge team for that same category each round?
Maybe another way to say it is, when we began a year ago, I think they were doing each round even faster than quarters, and we've gone to sort of a quarterly process. But with the challenges themselves changing every quarter, it gets a little bit overwhelming. We're growing as a community, and I think that while I like the idea of new ideas coming in every quarter, I also think maybe some continuity over the year, for instance, is also important. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I don't think, so I think if we had a challenge team that had some challenges that did have a annual like agenda, they would just resubmit the challenge each round, right? Or are we thinking of a different process for that?
Yeah, well, I'm gonna try to get some thoughts in writing on that. So I appreciate your feedback, Darlington. Let me go ahead to reviewing the guidelines for the vCA role, so we don't get too off track with today's agenda. And then I'll come back to Alan and Jay with whatever thoughts they want to contribute. So let me put in the chat first. I have some links. You probably have access to these things, but just in case you're having difficulty finding things, here are some resources for the community, and then we'll go over the guidelines. So in the chat, I'm putting that in now. Oh, did that? Doesn't? Yeah. Okay, that's it. All right, there you go. And I will say too, like I put both the Discord and the Telegram channels. I've been using Discord more myself, but I do see there was a lot of activity on the Telegram this week for the Community Advisors channel. So I plan to be more active in that over the next month or so. And then let me share my screen and bring up, let's go over the guideline again. And as far as I know, and correct me if I'm wrong, if anyone knows better, but there isn't a separate guideline for the vCA role, but the guideline for being a CA includes that. Is that what everyone else understands too?
Yeah, that's correct. Just one document.
Yeah. I suppose more than one document gets unwieldy. And I'm just going to bring this back over here for myself so I can see it better. So I'm going to skip down and we went over some of this last week. But I think, again, the highlights here are that we're looking for what the impact is. And in particular, do you have alignment in what you're proposing with what the challenge was seeking to accomplish? And as Alan was pointing out, that's actually, to be fair to the proposers, that's can be challenging to do. So I do recommend some flexibility on that. If someone's really off, then it's appropriate to not give them a good review on that. But, keep in mind that we're trying to come together as a community. So, the challenge team has kind of proposed something, but the proposers may come in with original ideas and then have a difficult time of sort of figuring out what challenge is most appropriate for what they really want to accomplish. So I recommend, taking that seriously about the alignment, but also having some flexibility with regard to the challenges that the proposers face in finding the right home for what they're seeking to accomplish. And then on the feasibility, you know, what we're looking for is the team needs to kind of describe who they are, what their track record is, and how this particular project will fit into their larger goals. And then they need to clearly define the resources that they're going to use. That's both people and maybe equipment that they're going to purchase with the budget. And then they have to have a kind of clear plan that outlines typically 3-month, 6-month, and then 12-month objectives for the projects. And I'll come back. I have some questions for the team too on that. I'll come back to. And then finally, as we've been talking about, the clarity and the auditability. So I think this is kind of like, how well are you able to understand the goals? And then how well are the goals going to be able to be measured? So things that help that process is a clear roadmap, metrics or KPIs, as we've discussed, and those need to be kind of, you know, this is our goal and this is the number that we're going to report on that goal. And then, you know, descriptions about what the real problems are that they're going to solve. And so then the grading is basically on alignment, feasibility, and verifiability. Now, what I wanted to do, let's see, I guess too, how these apply, these also apply to the Fund 8 challenges too, you know, of, you know, this is going to be the next steps for the community. And with those, and actually, there was a message on Telegram that I think we have fewer reviews done in this area. So in terms of how you might want to allocate your time over the next 2 days, with we having a 1-day extension, you may want to do some of the reviews of this Fund 8 challenge in that category. Because apparently that's an area where there's currently not as many assessments done. And okay, so then I think this is where we get into the vCA role, and just, you know, reminder of how this works. There's a couple of key differences. The community advisor role is anonymous, or at least it's intended to be anonymous, but, you know, that we had a difficulty with that this week that they're trying to fix. The vCA is intended to be purposefully not anonymous. So be clear that your name is going to be attached to your work as a vCA. Now, the vCAs do not provide any written feedback. They just this is a process of kind of going through these assessments and making a judgment as to whether, and there's 3 categories. I'm forgetting the names of them off the top of my head, but they're essentially not good reviews or not good assessments. Let me stick with that wording. And those will be thrown out. It's a good assessment or it's an excellent assessment. And there's a chart here that kind of helps to provide some guidance of what that is. I'm not going to try to read the whole thing right now, but I recommend going through that. So the categories here are, you know, did the assessor provide positive feedback? Did the CA of their own ability to assess a proposal. So you know, do you get a sense when you read the review that you kind of understood who the assessor was and what their qualifications for it are? Does the score fit against the challenge criteria? And then let's see, does the CA opinion on the proposal overall? Okay, so there, you know, I think one of the things they're looking for in particular is, does the score that you gave match with the words that you wrote? And having gone through this myself, it can be surprising that there can be distinct mismatches there. Whether that is accidental, something went wrong, or whether it was intentional, it's hard to say, but it can be kind of surprising one way or another, where you have a score maybe that's high, but the feedback is the written feedback is not good, or the other way around. And then accountability to the community. And you know, this is sort of how this gets to that auditability section. You know, how clear is the proposal? Are we going to be able to measure the outcomes? And in terms of ones that will be, you know, filtering out assessments, that really, let's see, let me try. Okay, so if you, yeah, all right, so some things that will cause your assessment to be filtered out, or as a vCA you would flag as not appropriate, are if there's not a rationale for your score. Like particularly if you leave it blank, then you know that's not going to be completed. But if you, for instance, feel a need to give a poor review, then you need to have a strong justification for that. And actually, this is one thing I was saying too, that because Jay brought this up last week, that we're more comfortable giving reviews over 3. If we give reviews below 1 and 2, you know, it's uncomfortable. And actually, as I thought about it, it is common for, you know, 1s and 2s are going to be looked at carefully in turn, you know, as to whether you have a strong enough justification to explain why you're not giving a good review on the proposal. So you do have to be prepared for that. And likewise, 5s will also be looked at very carefully. You know, if you're giving a very high review on a proposal and you're not providing a justification for that, that's also could be flagged as being inappropriate. Okay, so then you want to avoid kind of personal opinions about it. You want to kind of stay factual about what the challenge is and how the proposal is addressing those challenges. And then another thing that can flag your assessment if it's unconstructive, meaning that it's either not written well, or it's maybe, you know, kind of not positive in a sense, and not really providing feedback, but just kind of being too negative. Or if it doesn't seem like you're bringing kind of experience to the assessment, so there's something misaligned about what you're writing with what was really intended by the challenge or the proposer. All right, so, and I think let me pause there, because I've kind of gone on for a bit, and now we can open it up to the question and answer session. I want to get to your comment, Jay, but you know, since you commented earlier, I'd like to take some others first. Let me stop sharing my screen before I do anything else. Hold on a second. I just need to find that again. And so I will come to yours, Jay, but I want to open it to anyone else that wants to offer a question first. Anyone else want to step up and fire away with a question? I got Alan there too, and I'm going to get to you both, but I'm looking for someone who hasn't already chimed in to speak up. Okay, thanks, Tommy. Go ahead.
All right, I sacrificed. So
Yeah.
I was a vCA in last fund for the first time, and it was super fun. Really interesting experience. I want to highlight the fact for new VCAs that you're not anymore assessing the proposal. You need to make the mental shift that you are now reviewing the assessment. So it was kind of hard for me in the beginning to stop looking at the proposal as such and start looking at the assessment. So that's like the first thing. Then another point is that you're supposed to be doing it on your own and you shouldn't be influenced by others. So for example, this Discord channel with the vCA, what is it called? Channel group, whatever.
Right.
You shouldn't really go there and start like bashing some CAs and say that this is shit, this is shit, this is shit.
Yeah,
if you want others to take a look at something, you can just subtly put the CA number there, or however you can hint that someone else might want to look at this, and then just leave it at that.
Yeah.
And maybe they will, maybe they won't.
Those are really good points, Tommy. And I'll bring up, I know from conversations I had after Fund 6 that one concern that came up was whether some CAs were setting up multiple accounts and, you know, sort of cut and pasting repeated reviews, and thereby kind of hacking the system a little bit. So that will be something that I'll be trying to take a look at myself, and that I think the community should, you know, have some awareness of. So that might be something that needs to be discussed on a Discord or Telegram channel. But I agree that it shouldn't be kind of focused on any particular individual. You know, we want to stay professional with regard to the process and the way we use the open forum channels. So that's great feedback, Tommy.
So in last fund, there were a few examples of that, and the Discord channel was used for exactly this purpose. And remember, the CAs are anonymous, so if we discovered 2 or 3 CAs with essentially duplicate copy and paste assessments, and you can call out CA 99, CA 100 are doing the same job.
Yeah,
most likely the same person. And
I might bring that up at the circle meeting next week too, because, you know, at some point we want to stick with the process and have the VCAs do that. But if we kind of detect that, then that's also interfering with our time in doing these reviews. So I'll bring that up. I'll plan to bring that up with the circle in terms of getting feedback from others who've been through this, you know, how that, what some good ways to handle that are.
Yeah, so I think, Kenric, the key point you mentioned, that the key thread through the VCA review process is, has the CA provided a rationale? Can they justify their statement? You can't just say this is a great project.
Right.
Like when your kid comes back from school and say, how was it? It was good. And that's all you get, right? That's all you get.
Yeah.
It was good. We need a bit more than it was good.
Yeah.
And as long as they can justify, you'll see well, hopefully less this time. People just writing this as a scam. This is great, fantastic, and a lot of one worders. Hopefully less this time, but those immediately get filtered out.
Right. Excellent.
Well, I wanted to add one more thing that I forgot to mention.
Go ahead.
So that is true what Navid said, but also there are some really good writers there, and then context matters. So same way as as a CA, it sometimes makes sense to take like one challenge and go through all of them at once. Same way you might want to take one proposer and go through all of them at once, because then only you see like what else have they written. Because if you just take one assessment, it might be amazing, beautiful, yes, great. And only when I started like going through proposals one by one, like going through all of their assessments, I realized that shit, these guys are copy pasting their own assessment, and that's not good anymore. And that's actually a tricky one, because on the outset it looks like really good, but then when you dive into it, it's like, okay, this is actually very generic and it has been copied from one to another.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Great tip, Tommy. Going proposal by proposal and reviewing all the assessments for that proposal not only gives you a view of the star rating that's being given across, but also then you can put that in context with the commentary that the assessments that the CAs have put in.
So that's two things: proposal by proposal, but then also proposer by proposer.
Okay, I didn't do that
Good
bit.
points. Jay, go ahead.
Yeah, Kenric. So, I just wanted to go back to what you were saying about having like a few, going back to like consistency with as we progress through Catalyst, man. I think that you're smart to offer up that to the circle. And I just wanted to maybe share an insight that I immediately had. I do a YouTube channel about crypto. I try to approach things from a fundamental perspective. And I think that there are fundamentals in blockchain. A few things I just thought were like RealFi, DeFi, GameFi, NFTs, lobbying with crypto, everything that's happening now, marketplaces. And the insight that I was thinking, and maybe this will, I hope it helps, maybe it doesn't, but feel free to take it and think about it, is as we get bigger funding, I just had this thought of like these consistent fundamental challenges. I think they're going to be important, because as we get bigger like funding, we can have specific challenges that are things that we think about that are relevant to the time. But how many times has there been a project that has like thought, oh, wow, look at these challenges. I meet with this and it's in the current fund. And then they think, okay, I'm going to go for Catalyst next fund. And then those challenges shift around. Exactly. I think it would be really helpful for maybe, plus these fundamentals too, by the way, we are gathering some proof of concepts for, and the way that I understand the more specific challenges, it's kind of to get those proof of concepts. So like, for example, a DeFi marketplace may be able to go to a broader category that's asking for more money if it's a more legitimate team and project than having to go to a specific challenge and try to fit their way in. Something of that effect is what I'm trying to articulate.
And I'll maybe share a little more since you brought it up again. What I have in mind is that maybe when we evaluate the voting on the new challenges, that we have kind of different threshold levels. So like if you're a brand new challenge, then maybe you have a higher threshold that you have to meet. And if you're kind of a follow-on challenge, then maybe for 2 or 3 quarters, you are able to renew your challenge at a lower threshold. In other words, like, so it's a little bit harder to start a new challenge, but then you get sort of a 2 or 3 quarter grace period in which, the voting is a lower threshold to continue your challenge. And that way there's some continuity each quarter that, if for instance, the proposer gets started in a particular area, in order to really achieve their goals, they may need a few quarters in order to actually achieve something significant. So I'll see what other members of the community think about that, but I was going to try to write something up along that line.
Yeah, I was thinking it would be really cool to see just these broader categories of just fundamental DeFi challenge, RealFi challenge, GameFi challenge, because those are going to be like the Legos to build out, from what I've studied,
Right,
building
and
out.
exactly, and I think one of them, I don't remember which one, but one of those kind of fundamental categories didn't make the threshold, I think, for either this round or the last round, and so that was part of where this discussion came from.
It was the
Yeah.
developer
Yeah.
ecosystem.
Yeah, and Alan, why don't you go ahead? I think you had another comment.
Yeah, a couple things actually. As far as the challenges for future rounds and so on, and I'm coming at this from a noob standpoint, so bear with me a little bit. Is there any reason that we couldn't say we have on average 20 challenge categories per round? Why couldn't we just set aside 10 of those to be kind of that static challenge that continues on, and leave the other 10 open to vote for, new perspectives or new possibilities?
Yeah, that's actually how it was done sort of the first half of the year. And so when this was first launched in January last year, and all the categories were set up by IOG. And then they started the process of having the community set some of the challenges. And then I think this round was the first one when all of the challenges were set by the community. But a new issue has arisen where, some fairly fundamental challenge areas didn't make the threshold. So,
Right.
yeah.
I also just think that bigger funding will probably, with those broader categories, it'll probably like help, because maybe a huge project that has a great team just didn't feel like, oh, okay, I should apply because the funding was a little bit smaller. So I think as the funding increased, that might solve the issue of not meeting the threshold. Just a thought.
Yeah. Yeah. Mike,
Okay,
did you have a question?
Oh, I still had two more.
Oh, go ahead, Alan. Go ahead. Yeah.
It's just some clarification. So,
Sure.
like I said, I'm here learning. I
Right,
am a
exactly,
CA right
right.
now, but it has helped me vastly to understand the roles. I just want to make sure I'm understanding this right. So, as a CA, we're basically auditing the proposal to make sure that it meets the criteria.
That's right.
For what we're asking. And then as a vCA, we're basically auditing the assessments themselves, or the CA's ability to logically assess, as well as how well they communicate that assessment to the vCA's. That's correct.
Right.
Or,
and
okay,
just to, and also to clarify, the conditions for being a vCA are that in a prior round, you were successful in writing an assessment that was approved and you got a reward for. So if this is your first time doing it, then you won't be able to participate in the vCA process. But once you've learned the process and shown that you can be a successful CA, then in a future round, you can also participate in the vCA role.
Right. I'm not necessarily interested right now any way shifting. I'm just trying to understand the dynamics better. Yeah. The one thing I'd like to comment on my own is I answered a lot of really brief responses to how I assessed them, thinking that there were probably character limitations and trying to keep things kind of clean and neat. So I might have, for instance, said if I gave something a 4-star for auditability, for instance, I might have said something along the lines of, this seems like it can be audited. I should have elaborated more, is what I'm taking from this, and went into why I felt like it seemed to be auditable. Correct?
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
So the basic guideline I give is that you want to try to write a good paragraph to justify your assessment, and that will give you a chance of getting an excellent review from the vCAs. And the components of that are, you explained a bit about what the proposal content is. But you're summarizing, because think about it from the voters' point of view. They may not have time to read the full. They're not going to have time to read the full proposals typically. They may only read your assessment. I'm not encouraging that, but it's each of these steps is time consuming. So then then you want to sort of, provide your critique and your feedback both to, and your audience there is both the proposers, so that in the future round, they can improve their proposal, and to the voters. And then finally, you want to kind of provide some indication. And I'm not sure, I feel like I need some clarification on this point too. Like they have this point here of, have you explained your own expertise in providing the review? There, what I would say is you don't need, we're certainly not looking for your resume, right? And this is anonymous, but you want to write it in a way that indicates areas where you feel like you have some background. Like if you have background in a particular area, you could kind of cite that. And then the other way too is you might, if you're trying to do a review and you're having difficulty doing it, you might even put some qualifiers on your assessment that, this is an area I don't understand as well, but this is what I'm gathering from it. I think those are the three things that make a good assessment.
Are there character limitations to those responses?
I'm not aware of what the character limit is. I've seen reviews that are more, as much as 2 paragraphs. I think at some point, if it's too long, that becomes unhelpful too. Yeah.
I was just cloudy on how to go about it, I guess.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's why
because
that's exactly why we're doing this. So I'm glad you joined. And if you've done several reviews, but some of them were just kind of a sentence long, I would encourage you to go back and improve those before you do any.
That was going to be my next question, if I was able to go back and revise those, because I totally will.
Yeah.
I know exactly which ones I went through. So
yep. Yes,
very much appreciated.
You have
Thank
till,
you.
I think you have to 5 UTC tomorrow? 5,
I
17.
don't know what the new deadline is. Does anyone? So
I
originally,
was told 5 UTC.
That's what
is
Daniel
that
posted.
PM? Is that
1700, yeah.
Yes.
1700 tomorrow? Okay. All right. So that's about noon on the East Coast for me.
Alan,
Yeah.
sorry, regarding the character limitation, I don't know a specific number, but I've seen really long reviews. So like over 1 word page, 1.5 word pages. I'm not aware of how many characters that is, but yeah, they can be long.
Yeah, they can be. I've seen long. I haven't seen them that long, but I have seen long ones. I don't think that's helpful. I don't think that. Others may have different opinions, and I'm open to hearing different opinions on that. But my guidance is 1 to 2 paragraphs is probably the most effective way to provide an excellent review.
Yes, yeah, there's a lot of variables there, aren't there? So it depends on the proposal. Some very technical ones, if you get 2 technical guys, so a technical proposer and a technical CA, they want to go into a lot of detail. Some people use very flowery language, and some people are more straight to the point. My assessments can be, tend not to go over a paragraph, but some people can go on writing and talking forever.
Yeah, I think the trouble I've had with that is where my reviews tended to go on the longer side.
Okay.
But even then, it was still one big paragraph and a small paragraph of like, this is how you could do it better in the future. Is
Okay.
there is not an ideal fit. But it seems like the spirit is maybe there, but it's not exactly hidden, say the metrics or the direction that the challenge team set. And so sometimes I feel like the team would be better serviced by going into some of those details and say, hey, these were the specific directions the team set.
I like that. I like that guidance, Darlington. So in other words, what you're saying is you have one paragraph that's kind of the assessment, and then a second paragraph of, here's some suggestions on how you could improve your proposal.
Right, especially when you get to that 2-3
Yeah.
range.
Yeah, that's
That
what
I
I'm
feel like the review tend to get a little more meaty, so they can find something useful from it.
Mhm.
Kenric, these are actually really good points that maybe you could bring up in circle when you are like revising the documents, the guides.
Right, exactly. I agree.
Yeah.
Still about that length, like there are some, or there was one or two CAs who basically took all of the questions and copy pasted those and then answered into those questions. And that just became unreadable. It was
Right.
not a good example.
Mhm.
But then sometimes it almost feels like some VCAs take a ruler and they're like, okay, this is more than 10 centimeters. This is excellent. And I don't think it should be like that. I try to be, as a CA, I try to be like very concise.
Mhm. Mhm.
I've done some copy and pasting when I'm trying to cite something. So like and I just want to get your takes on this, but for like the actionable section, the feasibility,
Mhm.
if I'm trying to, if I see that the team is demonstrating that they have a lot of experience and they have a lot of know-how, sometimes I'll just copy and paste what they say that their experience is, and as a reason why this fits not only the proposal, why this experience fits the proposal and what they're trying to do. So I've definitely copy and pasted, but Tommy, it doesn't sound like you're saying copy and pasting in general is bad, only if you have like a mass amount of copy.
No, I
Yeah,
think what
yeah.
he's referring to.
I've done the same. So sometimes when you need to prove a point or when you need to like refer to something specific, then you copy paste that part and refer to that. But what I meant is that in the CA guide, you had these questions. So someone had taken all of those questions and copied them into every single assessment that they put. And that was just horrible.
I see. Okay. Yeah, no, right.
Jay, with the copying pasting, absolutely agree. It's fine. It's fine. What we have to remember is who our customer is here. We're doing this one for the proposer to provide feedback, but probably more importantly for the voters. A lot of voters will not read the proposal. They got 900 things on this app to go through, and they're going to look at the star rating. They're going to have a look at your comments. So if we've a CA distilled that into a concise assessment, they'll take that with your star rating and or put down vote it. It's kind of as simple as that. So they're not going to go searching through and looking at LinkedIn profiles and work out who does what and how many proposals some guys got. They'll just take pretty much whatever the CA's written in most cases. Some people may be a bit more, a lot more thorough, but in general, I'm talking.
Yeah, and again, I think Jay, the what you're referring to is the right way to do it in a sense, and that's what I'm saying is that it is helpful to provide a little summary of the proposal itself as part of your factual foundation for your assessment. So that's good. I think another thing that Tommy was that would be negative is if you wrote an assessment, right? And then you just cut and paste that assessment into 5 or 6 different proposals in order to try to speed up the process. That's not helpful. That's a way of gaming the system that just becomes counterproductive. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I wanted to comment a little bit on some of this because I think since we've iterated and we've gotten to the point where we have this sort of extended period for comments and feedback, I find that doing assessments sometimes I end up, okay, let me start by saying, I think assessing a poor proposal is a lot harder than assessing obviously a good proposal, which makes me question the incentive mechanism for the bonus if it gets voted in or something like that, if I'm understanding things correctly. But that's another subject.
It's another subject, but I'm in complete agreement with you on that one. I'm not sure that's the best way to do the bonus.
I think it's a bit weird because it would make me look for the best proposals and then review them, which is kind of a stupid incentive like structure. But anyway, I want to say though that if I'm doing ones that I can tell this is a new proposal, it's not up to speed, since we've iterated and iterated, and we're in fund, 7, and since fund 4, someone's been trying to get a proposal through. Finally, they've gotten all these inputs. They've built a team. They've learned what successful proposals look like, and then they execute on that, and then they have a much better chance of getting voted in. Again, that proposal is going to be a lot easier for me to assess. I've been assessing proposals that weren't so easy to success. I end up writing a fair amount as a result. And I think that, I agree, that's not super helpful for the voting process. Because if I'm a voter and I go into 1,000 other proposals, which I haven't looked at, and I'm trying to assess how I want to vote on them in areas that I'm not an expert, like a lot of the technical stuff, then in fact, I need to rely on the shortness and the conciseness and the quality of a CA's set of, and I do read through all of those to orient myself. And then if I really get interested, I'll go into the proposal and I'll dig deeper, and I'll go, I want to vote on this, or I don't, or whatever. So I think we need to work with that other existing structure, which is the time we have to give comments and feedback should displace some of the time that we CAs actually have, as reviewers. And then maybe, it could be in the guidelines to say, let's try to keep the writing down. We have to justify our scores, but it seems like that would be one way to develop further.
Right. Very good, Mike. Thanks. That's great feedback. Tommy, did you have another question?
Yeah, commenting on this. So basically, I mentioned in the beginning that you need to make the mental shift from commenting the proposal to commenting the assessment. But I noticed that some vCAs, they actually didn't even look at the proposals, and then it's just impossible to know what you're talking about, or what the assessment is talking about. So definitely take a look at the proposal first, and then tackle the assessments relating to that. And then it makes sense to go through all of the assessments regarding that same proposal. And another thing, when it comes to
maybe a way I would say it, because again, the vCAs also are under time pressure, and it's important to do quality on this, but it's also important to be respectful of people's time. Is what I would say for the vCA role is make sure you've read the challenge well, and understand what was asked of the challenge. And then as you go through the assessments, one question you can keep in mind is the assessor seem to have a good understanding of the challenge and what was being looked for? And is their review going to help someone that's voting make a good judgment about?
So first,
the danger, what I find, so sometimes what I'd say is, I think I understand what you're saying is, and then I certainly read the highlights of the proposal. And then what happens is, if I get to an assessment where I'm unsure, like there's something that's not clear to me about the assessment, then I'll maybe dig into the details of the proposal and try to see whether the assessment and the proposal are matching up. But on some assessments, you can kind of read the assessment. If they do it well, then I think again, because they provided some clear information about what's in the proposal. Then I think you can say, this is either.
I don't mean that you should read it word by word, the proposal, and check all the attachments and go to YouTube and find out their LinkedIn profiles. No, you don't need to do that. But just overall, take a look at the proposal before you start.
Very good, Tommy. Thanks.
But what I wanted to say, another point regarding these really bad, not bad, but let's say draft or unfinished proposals. In those cases, if the CA has said that, okay, this is a draft, it cannot be assessed, I think that's a good, worthy assessment. It's not filtered out, even though it's only a few words.
Right.
Yeah, I absolutely agree on that one. In some cases, we have to remember a lot of proposers are here for the first time. They're learning the process. They may have a great idea, and so you can still comment on potential impact and how assess the impact of the idea, even if they haven't got details of plans and resources and budgets and KPIs and milestones and risks and all that good stuff.
Right.
They don't know really how they're going to implement, but they have a decent idea. It's good then to provide that feedback, and that still becomes a good or potentially even an excellent assessment.
Excellent. And Jay, did you have another question?
Yeah, I was listening to all you guys, and I just wanted to spin off on something that Mike said about the incentive structure for the if a proposal gets voted in. And I heard Mike's and he made a great point of view, and I totally agree that it could be gamed. I just wanted to add though that I actually really like that incentive structure, because what it's made me do is, like, I always think of the ADA voter when I'm doing my reviews, because they're the people that are going to be, reading it and trying to give them as much value as possible. I've been doing a lot of stuff in the DeFi challenge, and I find that some of the proposals that I research for like an hour, let's say, and really read and try to understand, communicating that in the simplest way is how I look at my job in these reviews. So that incentive actually motivates me on the proposals that I actually believe in and really would love to see and believe that will make a huge impact on Cardano, to really well-defined and simple terms for the ADA voters. So I think that there is a use case for that incentive, but I think the broader conversation is there could be other incentives along the way. And I heard somebody say the commenting on proposals in the beginning stages, and I really like that. So I think that would be a cool way that this could go, is just multi incentives too, spread them out a bit.
It's kind of waiting for the reputation system or something like that to emerge, and then little incentives can be introduced.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I like that. Yeah. Once yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I can give some feedback on. So here's what I understand was why they created that that sort of incentive bonus, is that they wanted to, given limitations of time, they wanted to make sure that people were kind of focusing on proposals that had merit, that had a good chance of being funded. And that way, there was some encouragement to kind of focus on the proposals that look like they're pretty high quality. I think that was one aspect of it. And then also, this might have been a secondary one, and maybe I'll just even leave it, because I think I'm not going to go there. I think I misunderstood something, but but I will say, as someone who's kind of very analytical, I have my own concerns about it, because in my mind, part of the CA role is to make a good judgment whether something is going to be a good project or not so good project. And it's not a role to be a cheerleader. And even as you described it, Jay, like I agree with the enthusiasm, and I agree that that's part of the role, but I don't think we want, the CA role isn't to be a cheerleader for projects. It's to provide sort of factual feedback as to the quality. And it's a little bit maybe challenging. And I like these kind of challenges. I don't have an answer to the problem, but for instance, if you give a bad review and that proposal isn't funded, but that was a good decision, right? That should get an award, right? There should be some incentive for accuracy. Now, how you measure that accuracy, that would be challenging. But that may even be something down the road that I try to work on, because I think it's kind of an interesting problem.
Kenric, man, I would love it if you I don't know if you can do this or whatnot, but I just am so eager to get somebody to review my reviews, because I just want to see, in my reviews, yeah, it is enthusiastic in some cases, but I really tried to just stick to what the proposal is saying, and use those as the reasons why it could be good for the challenge. I take my own, any fake or fake,
well, you will get that, right? In a
it,
couple of weeks, you'll have your feedback from the VCAs, right?
Yeah.
Because that's exactly what's going to happen. Yeah. So,
before that. So
yeah, well,
Friday,
thanks, Jay. That's great.
before that,
and-
this Friday, the proposers get to see everyone's reviews. So
Yeah, yeah.
You may get some feedback on Saturday.
Oh, that's true too. Yeah, if
they hate your review.
if you have, you're going to have to give out some reviews that aren't good. That's the appropriate thing to do, and the proposers are going to push back because so go ahead, Naveed. What is your question?
So I just want to make one point on the VCA work and the auditability of VCAs themselves. So in the hierarchy, in the process, there's nobody looking at VCAs, right? So
it could become an infinite loop, right? And
indeed. But
I'm not saying I'm sure.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, for instance, I don't know this specifically, but I'm sure that Dor and Dan and others leaders of the whole Catalyst program care about how the VCA role is going, and it has evolved. The process actually was quite a bit different in the early rounds. So, and part of what happened in the early rounds is kind of an awareness that, hey, not all these assessments are really up to the level we want. We're going to have to review the assessment. So that's how this process got started. And it's kind of evolved to this system of, kind of just 3 levels. But yeah, I suppose it's part of my responsibility too, as a representative of this community, to look at how the process went. And if there are things that are concerning about how the VCAs are ranking things, that might be something to look at in the future. And maybe that's a good, let me segue. I'll take some more questions and comments, but that's maybe a good segue to a question I had for you all is, what my plans over the next couple of months are the following. We have a sort of 2-week holiday break where we'll be working on the VCA role, but there won't be town hall meetings. And then the next town hall meeting in the early January, I was planning to have a session about sort of feedback on the process. How did things go? What do we need to make improvements on? And then as we get to kind of actually trying to make some improvements, that's not something I can do on my own. So I'm wondering kind of how much interest there is in, putting together kind of a CA team that works on improving the process. And whether that's something people would be interested in participating in, and how we would, and what your suggestions are on putting a team like that together. Anyone want to comment on that?
How is that different from all the feedback gathered? Like at least last round, we gave feedback for the CA tool, we gave feedback for the VCA tool, we gave feedback for proposing, for being a CA, for being a VCA. How is that different?
It's part of that, exactly. And I will work with the process they have in place. So you're right, Tommy, they have feedback for all the different roles. But the question maybe comes to how do we take that feedback and make improvements? And in particular, maybe this is the real issue, is that if you go back a year ago, maybe even 18 months or 2 years ago, the 3, it was IOG, the Cardano Foundation, and Ergago that really drove the development to this community. But the goal is to build a decentralized community. And so they're looking for the community to kind of take responsibility for making improvements, for instance. So that's kind of what I'm referring to is, we don't, IOG will be looking at that feedback. The Catalyst Circle team will be looking at that feedback, but ultimately it's the community that has to kind of dig into that feedback and work on some improvements together.
Well, I think most of the feedback boils down to the fact that idea scale sucks.
I've heard a lot of that. You know, there is a lot of feedback to try to have a better website interface. I'm a little bit, that's a tough project. You know, that's not an easy one to take on. So I'm sort of curious to see who's ambitious enough to actually take it on and build a better system. To me, it works pretty darn well for a hard problem.
Yeah, but we have to admit the fact at some point that you can't just like base everything on text, and we're outright like saying no to people who don't speak English. Then we're outright saying no to people who are dyslexic. Then we are outright saying no to people who just can't read properly or write properly. So it's very limited in that sense already.
Yeah, that's really true.
And then just the fact that it's not decentralized itself is very much against the things that we are trying to do. So we can't have changes in idea scale that we want to have, because we would have to go to the team and we would have to pay them to make those changes. So there you go. I've gone on record saying this.
Yeah, and I appreciate the feedback you put in the comment area. I actually agree with your point. So that in terms of improving the process, I do think re-looking at that bonus system will be one of the things we should do. So thanks. Yeah, I appreciate that.
I mean, we have gone forward leaps and bounds in just a couple of funds. So we are improving all the time, but we are always hitting our head against the idea scale wall.
It looks like some new people, Melanie and Evans, and maybe Simon has joined. So if you have some questions about the VCA role, chime in. Any of you? Go ahead, Jay.
Could I just, thanks so much. So I really wanted to say that I would be super interested in some kind of CA like hierarchy. Like, to me, what Catalyst is providing me, I'm noticing, is, you know, I'm a YouTuber, right? I live and breathe crypto, but Cardano is like the only blockchain, and Catalyst seems like the only thing that can offer me like something to actually aim towards and progress and go deeper into. So I think like if there was, you know, some way to go deeper and spend more time, and if there's incentives as well, like there is for like reviewing, then I could spend all day just thinking out solutions. I think, you know, Tommy made a great point, and I'm actually not the best reader. So when I do all of my reviews, I'm putting it on free text-to-speech.com, and I'm listening to it 3 or 4 times. And that's how I read white papers when I do my stuff on YouTube. So I agree, man. Not everyone can read.
Well,
and to be implemented, and I'd love to work on those, by the way. So
yeah,
I think
and the incentives might be around facilitating a good proposal for fund aid, right? So I don't think there would be rewards up front, but the discussions and the activities around that maybe become a proposal, you know, for an initiative. There's one way to think about it. But I'll see too. You know, that's, so this is good.
I think there are some paid roles coming later, I think next year, but I don't know anything about this.
Awesome. I'm just going to stick around and see what happens, man.
Yeah. Well, and actually, you know, those that are active, you know, I won't be in this role as a representative for the CA community forever, so someone else can step in is another way. Yep. So very good. I think we've covered quite a lot. I'm going to suggest that we wind it down at this point, but before we do, I'm happy to take sort of closing thoughts or comments, and we'll let Naveed go first.
So yeah, just one final point, just one word of caution for VCAs. It's when you're transitioning between a CA and you've put a lot of thought into assessing and writing those paragraphs and getting your words out. You're now into a practical process. All you're doing is ticking a box, excellent, filtered, or good. And it looks really, really simple. It's kind of, you're in a spreadsheet and you're ticking a box. Very, very easy. From most people will go through that thought process. This is so easy to game. Should I just tick everything?
Yeah.
I'm getting $1. I'm getting $1 per tick. How simple is this? You will get caught out. It happened in the previous fund. There was the VCAs will audit themselves, so it's a self-auditing community, and there's a few of us who are data nerds, and we love to look at spreadsheets.
That's a good point, right? So that's part of
people will get called. People will get called out and assessed, and eventually, I think there's one guy who ended up not getting his VCA rewards. Out of the 2000.
Right, so that's a good point. Is that part of the auditability on the VCA is that it is a public role rather than an anonymous role. So that's part of how there's some accountability for that. Right. Very good. And Tommy?
Yeah, so if you want to try that, the easiest way is to take the Excel sheet and just go tick, tick, tick on that. and focus on the good, because you might not be caught so easily if you just put good on everything. No, that wasn't what I wanted to end with. What I want to end with is the fact that for me, being a VCA made my voting so much easier because I had gone through like more than 1,000 proposals. Right. I saw so many, and I was so energized after that. And although it's a really hard job, I was so energized and so inspired after that because I got to see so much of it. So when I actually went to vote, I was like, hey, this is the one that I really love. This is the one that I really love. So when you don't have to like what's the word? You're as a CA, you have to be like what's the word? I'm losing my English. You can't be like carried away by the ideas, but as a VCA, you are no longer bound by the proposal, but you are just bound by the assessment. So when you have seen all those, and then you're like, oh, now I can go and vote for all of those. It's a nice feeling.
Yeah, thank you, Tommy. I think that's a fantastic way to meet the close the meeting, because that's what it's all about, is helping the voters. And as Tommy says, by participating in the assessments, you improve your ability to be a good voter. Yeah, so that's terrific. Well, I appreciate everyone joining us. It's been another fantastic discussion. Good luck with your reviews of the assessments, and ultimately the voting process. And I'll see you in the new year.
Thanks, Kenric. I got a couple gems out of that for the last 5 minutes. So that was great. Perfect.
Yeah, super. Thanks for joining us.
Take care, you guys.
All right.
Thank you. Good night.
See everyone.
Thanks, Kenric. As always, man. We'll see you around.
Take care.